Mr. President, don't you have kids? Don't you have kids, Mr. President?
Protest and anger on Capitol Hill and right across the United States, all over the separation of migrant children from their parents at the border. And yet tonight, Donald Trump remains defiant, insisting parents who enter that country illegally must go to jail. Their children taken away. Tonight, we're digging into this story, the politics, the detention centers, and what happens to all those kids caught in the middle.
Also tonight, a historic vote in Ottawa. Legal pot now just weeks away, but is Canada really ready? This is The National.
The chorus of anger is growing louder by the day over the warehousing of migrant children far from their parents. Zero tolerance with, for many, intolerable consequences. In a moment, we'll get the view from a detention center where dozens of kids are being held. And later, a look at the psychological trauma these kids experience as they wonder when or if they'll be reunited with their parents. But we begin our coverage tonight in Washington, where U.S. lawmakers are caught in a double bind tonight, facing the wrath of constituents on one side and an obstinate president on the other. As Paul Hunter explains, appeasing both may simply not be possible.
And so the anger mounts in Texas.
Let the children go!
And in Washington, demanding an end to Donald Trump's approach on curbing illegal immigration, a policy that leads to migrant families torn apart at the border.
We are outraged that President Trump is sentencing these children to a lifetime of trauma.
Not far away on Capitol Hill, barely contained fury.
We will not keep kids in child internment camps indefinitely and hidden away from public view. What country is that?
For the moment, it's the way it is in Donald Trump's country. Detainment centers for migrants caught crossing into the U.S. illegally. Under Trump's directive, all adults are prosecuted criminally. Zero tolerance, which means children are automatically taken from their parents. And once again today, Trump himself dug in against the outcry.
We can't let people pour in. They've got to go through the process, and maybe it's politically correct, or maybe it's not.
Previous administrations prosecuted some such migrants, but not nearly at the rate Trump has directed. In roughly the past month, more than 2,000 parents have been held for prosecution, more than 2,300 children taken from them.
Anyone who has seen the photos, heard the audio of small children alone and afraid, crying out for their parents, cannot help but feel horror and disgust.
Tonight on Capitol Hill, on his way out after a 45-minute meeting with Republican lawmakers on this, Trump was yelled at by Democratic lawmakers.
Mr. President, don't you have kids?
Trump is said to have told Republicans at that meeting he'd sign off on legislation that would end family separation and provide for a border wall. Democrats note Trump could end family separation at any time on his own if he wanted to. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Washington has a long history of using detentions and deportations to strike fear among illegal immigrants. Despite efforts by previous presidents to stifle border crossers, the numbers remain high. So just how does President Trump's approach compare to his predecessors?
We cannot and will not encourage people to bring their children or other children to the country unlawfully by giving them immunity.
The hardline approach originates with the Attorney General and Trump advisor Stephen Miller. They argue people will stop entering illegally if they know they could lose their kids. It's something George W. Bush and Barack Obama chose not to do, they said, for moral and legal reasons. Following a surge in 2014 of some 70,000 parents with children at the border, the federal courts told the Obama administration families could not be detained indefinitely. So rather than separate children from parents, families were released to make their asylum claims. The Trump administration now glibly calls that catch and release, suggesting those people just go underground.
You catch, you take their name, and you release. So great, wonderful. then they're supposed to show up to a court. There's only one problem: they never show up.
So while the Obama administration had no widespread policy of separating families, it tried to crack down in other ways. President Obama earned himself the nickname Deporter-in-Chief by immigration activists, given he deported more than 3 million people, the most of any commander-in-chief, in part because of more arrests at the border. But while Obama tried to stop people from flooding the borders, he also tried to protect 4 million undocumented workers already there.
Felons, not families. Criminals, not children. Gang members, not a mom who's working hard to provide for her kids. We'll prioritize.
The Supreme Court ultimately blocked Obama's executive order, and so this is part of Trump's hardline attempt to fix a system that politicians on both sides of the aisle recognize is broken. There are about 100 different facilities across 17 states housing unaccompanied kids. Our Kim Brunhipper got the view from one of those shelters just outside San Diego.
In and out they go. White vans mostly, and inside the vans, kids being transported to what will become their new home, a home with no mom or dad. In this one-story, tan building about 30 kilometers east of San Diego are migrant children, about 65 of them, who have been separated from their parents. The department taking care of the kids released video showing what's behind the gate, a kitchen, bedrooms, like a school in which you can sleep over. Normal looking enough. But, say those standing outside, this is not normal.
I mean, children are being separated from their parents.
38-year-old Monica Verduzco. She says she was thinking of traveling to Texas to protest outside the big detention facility housing migrant children. Then she learned there was one just 75 kilometers from her house.
That's when I said, oh, no, not in my backyard. I don't understand how people can know about everything that's going on and not speak about it, not show up, and just turn their other cheek or change the channel.
So she's here, waging a lonely battle, hoping to change the minds of those who support what's happening here.
I know that they have hearts. I know that they have to care. I know that somebody will have to do something, even if it's just me.
But soon it's no longer just her. 79-year-old Bob Long, a retired teacher.
It would bother my conscience if I wasn't here. I couldn't sleep at night.
On last night's news, he saw House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi visit. So he came, hoping to join what he assumed would be a massive protest. Instead,
I'm down here with one lady. Everybody else is someplace else. To me, silence is violence.
Make sure you're on the right side of history.
Verduzco says she too is disappointed by the turnout, but that won't stop her, she says, from coming back tomorrow.
I don't know what I could do, but if I have to stand here all day long and just let everybody know what's going on, then I'll start there.
Kim Brunhuber, CBC News, El Cajon, California.
On average, 50,000 people are apprehended every month for illegally crossing the U.S. border from Mexico. So why would they risk so much? Possible detention, deportation, and now even family separation just to get to the United States. Well, it has a lot to do with where they're coming from. An increasing number are from the Central American countries of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. The three countries form a region known as the Northern Triangle that consistently rank among the world's most violent countries. In fact, El Salvador has the world's highest homicide rate, 49 times higher than that of Canada. Organized crime, gang violence, and turf wars are legacies of decades of civil war across the region. Drug trafficking adds to that brutality. Extortion is also rampant. Those dangerous conditions are why an estimated 10% of the entire Northern Triangle's 30 million residents have fled to other countries in the last decade, and mostly for the United States. Much more ahead on this story. You may have seen this powerful photo making the rounds. A photographer captured a little girl, clearly in tears, as her mother is searched and detained near the border. A little bit later, we'll hear from the man who took that picture, and we'll take a deeper look at how this sudden separation could forever change these kids' lives.
First, though, here's what else we're working on. We now know the identity of the man pushed onto the subway tracks in Toronto and killed, seemingly at random, yesterday. We'll look at the anxiety on the platform tonight.
And they survived a bomb attack at the Canadian Embassy in Kabul. Now they're sharing their story for the first time as they take the Canadian government to court.
But first, a major milestone in legalizing pot tonight. The Senate passed the Cannabis Act. All that's left is royal assent. It means before the summer is over, if you're 18 or older, you'll be allowed to grow pot at home. Manitoba and Quebec say they will fight that provision, but everyone of age will be able to possess and buy it in limited quantities. As for how it will be sold at the retail level, that will, not surprisingly, vary from province to province. It will be a while before the new law takes effect, but as Catherine Cullen reports, critics are already flagging potential problems.
This could be the home of your new pot dealer.
We'll be providing a guided personal shopping experience.
The president of Cannabis New Brunswick says it's the first government-run marijuana store in the world.
It is. We're the first jurisdiction in Canada that's ready.
In many ways, it started here.
I'm actually not in favor of decriminalizing cannabis. I'm in favor of legalizing it, tax and regulate.
When newly minted Liberal leader Justin Trudeau made his pitch. 5 years later, legalization is poised to become a reality, but there are still plenty of questions about what comes next.
There will be surprises. It's not going to be perfect.
Take drug-impaired driving, a concern other jurisdictions that legalized have had to deal with.
We are seeing that more often in fatal crashes, the driver, at least one of the drivers, has THC still in their system. That doesn't mean it caused the crash, but it's certainly a statistic that's going to be worth watching.
The federal government is trying to address that with a new, tougher law on impaired driving. Then there's pricing and profits. Legalizing pot will undoubtedly be big business for corporations, but in the early days, some governments believe it will cost money to set up a regulated system.
I can tell you that for the first couple years, we're not seeing this as a revenue generator at the government of Alberta. We're seeing it as a net loss.
And prices will undoubtedly affect how well the system works overall, particularly when it comes to shutting down the illicit market. That is part of the government's stated goal.
Criminal organizations, street gangs, and gun runners are making around $6 billion a year right now through the illicit trade of marijuana. That has to stop.
But experts aren't convinced it will stop.
And we're very cognizant to realize that the chances of organized crime being eliminated in the cannabis market would be probably naive to think that that could happen.
We still don't know just when legalization will kick in. The government will choose the date with input from the provinces, but you can look for legal pot to be a reality in Canada sometime in August or September. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Some of the developing stories we're tracking tonight, reaction to Donald Trump's latest attack on Canada. He was talking trade today in Washington, and this time he accused Canadians of smuggling shoes.
People living in Canada coming into the United States and smuggling things back into Canada because the tariffs are so massive. They buy shoes and they wear them. They scuff them up. They make them sound old or look old. No, we're treated horribly.
Trump says he learned about Canadians sneaking shoes to avoid massive tariffs from a newspaper article, and it is true. Over the years, many people have snuck purchases back into Canada from the States to avoid duties. Canada doesn't plan to put a tariff on shoes. Trump's comments quickly had the U.S. Footwear Industries Trade Association trying to clear the air, stating in a tweet, Justin Trudeau, the U.S. footwear industry welcomes you and all Canadians to come and buy shoes in America, as many as you want, and scuff them up if you want. We can sell you more. Hashtag free trade. And reaction is rolling into another Trump administration decision, this one to withdraw the U.S. from the United Nations Human Rights Council.
For too long, the Human Rights Council has been a protector of human rights abusers and a cesspool of political bias. We take this step because our commitment does not allow us to remain a part of a hypocritical and self-serving organization that makes a mockery of human rights.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, today on why her country is pulling out. She also accused the Council of being biased against U.S. ally Israel. In response, the UN Human Rights Council posted a statement from its chief saying it was disappointing, if not really surprising news. Given the state of human rights in today's world, the U.S. should be stepping up, not stepping back. In Toronto, there are new developments in that shocking murder case one day after a passenger was pushed to his death at a busy subway station.
I don't have any indication that they were chatting beforehand. At this point in time, that's sort of what we're working on, is completely an unprovoked attack on this gentleman.
The suspect, John Resetnik, appeared in court today and was charged with first-degree murder. And police revealed he was known to them after a minor interaction in 2015. Also tonight, police identifying the victim as Yusuka Heihara, age 73. But this story is far more than just one court case. For daily commuters, it's an unsettling reminder that in an instant, a speeding train can become deadly. Today, Joanna Remiliotis watched that fear settle in.
It seemed today people hung back more, kept their backs closer to the walls. It is horrific to imagine, must have been terrifying to witness. A train midway into the station. In a split second, a deadly shove.
Well, I think this is tragic. It's absolutely terrible. But you see people, you see what happened here? They walk by the edge. And it's easy for a crazy guy just to push you.
A day after a 73-year-old man was pushed to his death, there is caution and curiosity too.
Can you just move fast?
A group of students craning to look, but most too uneasy to get close.
Now I feel a little scared, so I stand a bit away from the tracks.
Unprovoked, apparently random. It's what makes the attack especially disturbing. Police believe it's why 7 or 8 key witnesses left the scene.
I understand it's a very traumatic incident that they may have witnessed. However, we would like them to come forward so we can interview them and sort of get a narrative from them about what actually transpired.
What happened is real. There are 5 other incidents of people being pushed onto Toronto subway tracks in the last 21 years, resulting in 1 death. But the fear now is suddenly larger.
The transparent barriers through which you can go through, and it only opens when the train comes in. That would be definitely safer.
Barriers would be safer, mostly because there are on average 24 suicide attempts a year. But it would cost at least $1 billion to retrofit an aging subway system.
It would save lives, it would be an operational efficiency, but we also recognize that there's tremendous cost involved, and that's where the feasibility study will come in.
That study's results are expected in a couple of years. Any decisions will be driven by tragedy, intentional or not. Joanna Remiliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
Those barriers are only used on one transit route in Canada. You will find them on either end of that rail link that connects Pearson International Airport with downtown Toronto's Union Station. They're much more widely used in Asian and European systems and well beyond that. Here's how they work in a number of stations in the Paris Metro. The safety doors open simultaneously with the car doors, so there is no ready access to the tracks. This station in St. Petersburg, Russia, was the first in the world to use platform doors and walls that keep the tracks completely out of sight. Commuters have learned to listen for the train.
Ahead tonight on The National, CBC News has learned the Canadian government is facing a $20 million lawsuit over a suicide bombing in Afghanistan. Why the families of the men killed that day are now speaking out.
And they've reunited for the first time since surviving the Humboldt bus crash. We'll hear from the players as they prepare to be hosted alongside their NHL heroes. The Canadian government is being sued for $20 million over a suicide bombing 2 years ago in Afghanistan. Most of the men who were killed were elite security soldiers from Nepal called Gurkhas, hired to protect the Canadian embassy. And as Murray Brewster tells us, their families and survivors say they were never properly compensated.
2 years ago, Afghan firefighters hosed down the bloody streets of Kabul. 13 Nepalese Gurkhas and 2 Indian workers, all contracted to guard the Canadian embassy, were dead. The work of an ISIS splinter group. The legacy for the survivors has not been washed away. Man Bahadur Thapa lives with chunks of the bomb and the bus embedded in his skin. His eyes, hands, and kidneys all bear the scars of that day.
मलाई न त सारा भन्नाले मलाई त्यहाँ कोही पनि हुन्थेन एउटा सिस्टर बस्थे रात दिनै बस्थे म यसै हेर्छु
Prem Badur Chetri is alive only because his lunch fell off his lap. He bent over just as the suicide bomber threw himself against the bus.
म त भाग्य नै भन्नु पर्यो अब के भन्नु त्यो त म त अहिले साँच्चै सम्झिने हो भने म कसरी बाँचेको छु जिउँदो छु भन्ने त्यो पनि म सक्छु.
This is the first time the survivors and widows have spoken publicly. In their lawsuit, the Gurkhas, highly trained former soldiers, claim Canada was negligent and failed to supervise their employer, Sabre International Security, and that the attack was foreseeable. They say they feel forgotten.
हुँदामात्रै चैनको निन्द्रा र पेटभरि खाना पाएको छु मैले गोर्खा गार्ड हुँदैन थियो भने भाइ यस्तो यस्तो अब हामी जान सकेन यस्तो यस्तो हालत छ सिचुएसन यस्तो छ तिम्रो गार्डलाई यस्तो यस्तो भनिदिनु.
Ottawa's position has been the Gurkhas did not work directly for the embassy, and their safety was the responsibility of Sabre. We asked Global Affairs for a response to the lawsuit. They've said nothing. That's cold comfort to Chitra Kumari Koriala, whose husband died in the attack.
यो आवाजहरु उनीहरुकै कानमा पुगोस् केही भएन उनीहरुले चाहिँ हाम्रो चाहिँ लापरवाही गरेर मारेकै हो यति चाहिँ हामीले भन्न सक्छौं कि.
After the Kabul bombing, Sabre bailed on its contract and left Canada scrambling. CBC News was unable to contact Sabre for comment. Even the lawyers for the families are struggling to find Sabre to serve papers.
They appear to have disappeared, so there's some very serious questions about Canada's selection of this contractor.
This is not the first time Canada has been criticized over private security contractors. There was concern during the Afghan war, and that led Ottawa to sign an international agreement known as the Montreux Document. That pledged Canada would hire only certified professional companies. It's unclear whether Sabre met that criteria. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
On the children being separated from parents at the U.S.-Mexico border, we've covered the politics, but after the break, we're going to get to the impact on the kids themselves. And you'll also hear the story of this one photo that's really come to symbolize the whole issue from the photojournalist who took it.
The officer asked her to set her child down, and just in that moment, when the girl's feet touched the ground, she started crying very loudly.
When you prosecute the parents for coming in illegally, which should happen, you have to take the children away. Now, we don't have to prosecute them, but then we're not prosecuting them for coming in illegally. That's not good.
That's Donald Trump today, echoing in his own way what other officials have said about the policy of separating children from their adults, their parents at the border. You can't arrest those illegally crossing the border without separating them from their kids. And Trump says there's no choice in the matter. In his administration's quest to toughen the border, the well-being of kids, collateral damage.
Cali te va a ayudar. ¿Qué va a pasar con su consulado?
This anguish, heard inside an unnamed detention facility obtained by ProPublica, is hard to hear. The images captured at the border foreshadowing what's to come. Children already sensing the fear, confused, dejected as their adults get detained. The fear, of course, more justified than they may know. The actual separations happen later, away from cameras. For more on the impact this has had on the thousands of kids reportedly separated and for some insight on what might happen to them next, I'm joined by Dr. Georges Benjamin. He's Executive Director of American Public Health Association. He's in Washington. Janet Gwillem is an attorney with Kids in Need of Defense. She is in Portland tonight. And Dr. Cristina Muñez is Mental Health Director of the Terra Firma program, and she's in New York. Good to see you all. Appreciate you making the time for this country where we're watching, obviously, with interest as this story unfolds. Maybe I'll start with you, Dr. Benjamin. Why is it important for organizations like yours to speak out? When you see the pictures that we've all seen, heard that audio tape, what is the thing that worries you and compelled you to speak out?
Well, you know, it's about the health impact of these kids. You know, it's the fact that we know that this sudden separation has not only an acute and negative impact on their health, but it can have long-term implications in a variety of areas. And so we're really concerned about it from that perspective. It's also an issue of fundamental justice.
What are some of the areas where you would be most concerned because of this forced separation, unexpected separation? What kinds of things would you be worried about happening to the child?
Well, you know, obviously the immediate concerns are they're fearful, they're scared, they lose their trust. That can result in a whole range of behavior activities. You know, anyone who has left their child at a daycare center or with any other kind of babysitter knows that you plan those kind of separations.
Sure.
You talk to the children, you talk to the people that are going to take care of your child, and sometimes when you come back, they're still very disturbed, even though they've been taken good care of.
Yeah.
But when this kind of separation occurs, these children have just a range of behavior problems afterwards. They don't sleep well, they don't eat well, and you know, particularly the young ones, frankly, with the stress that occurs, they can actually have some long-term impact on their brain function. And so that's one of the long-term things we're worried about.
So Dr. Munoz, you haven't seen any of these children, but you have seen children in situations similar to this. What kinds of things do you see the children exhibit in the immediate, in the aftermath?
Well, in the immediate, as Dr. Benjamin mentioned, there's a lot of different symptoms of acute stress. You see a lot of developmentally regressed behaviors, like kids that cling to their caretakers once they are reunited with them and they develop separation anxiety. They may become withdrawal, they may develop depressive symptoms. Yeah. A whole array of different reactions in the immediate moment, but the most concerning is the long-term impact in their cognitive functioning, in their relationship styles, their ability to develop relationships throughout their lives with peers, with caretakers, with adults, and with their own partners as adult individuals.
Because of attachment issues, I would imagine. So Janet, your organization helps from the legal perspective. Give us a sense of what would be happening to these children who are obviously too young to be able to advocate for themselves. I understand some of them don't have documents or papers, so it's hard to even know who's in the system. Give us a sense of that part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our organization represents unaccompanied immigrant children. All of the kids that we work with have originally been put into the custody of the Office of Refugee Resettlement and are staying in shelters or other types of facilities that are contracted with the Office of Refugee Resettlement. And we begin, they're all placed into removal proceedings in the immigration courts and charged with immigration violations. But because these are administrative courts, the children are not guaranteed the right to a court-appointed attorney. And so they have a right to have an attorney, but not to have a court-appointed attorney. So that's where we come in and provide representation for them. But it's a very, very complicated process.
And what is the likelihood that these children get lost in the system or never find their parents again? How often does that happen?
Well, the latest round of family separation is pretty new, so it's hard to tell what the ultimate results are going to be. The children that we've been in contact with have eventually, after sometimes months, been able to reconnect with their parents, but some of them, the parents have been deported and the children are still in the U.S. The children still have claims to asylum, so they won't be necessarily being reunited with their parents.
Okay, so Dr. Benjamin, when you look at this unfolding, does it remind you of other incidents of separation? Because certainly we have talked about that in this country, other times where these kinds of things have happened, and we know that it does long-term damage.
Yeah, you know, you think about all the kinds of separation that you have when you have divorce, or you have a parent, one of the parents dies, or both parents die, or and tragically, during the war, when we had the Japanese internment camps, there's a whole range of experiences where we know, and we've looked back at the health and well-being of those populations. And when you do these kinds of forced incarcerations and forced separations, particularly when taking the children away from their parents, they have significant health impact. And that health impact is not good.
Right, and the fact that they may not even have contact with their parents throughout that period that they are detained, because it doesn't sound like anyone's getting a phone call or anything. What do we think would be the impact of that, being completely severed from that relationship? Maybe Dr. Benjamin and then Dr. Munoz.
Yeah, you don't know if you don't know what's happened to your parents. The other problem is not just that you can't contact them, but that the people that you are in contact with have no clue as to what's going on with your parents and are unable to give you that information.
Right.
You know, when you have a babysitter watching your kids, you know when the parents are going to come back, and you can tell the kids, yeah, your parents say they're going to be back at 10 o'clock, so not to worry. But when you don't know that creates more fear, more distrust, and bigger problems for that child as they go through life.
So, Dr. Munoz, what do you say to kids in those situations, either during it or after, as they try to come to terms with what's happened?
What do you tell them? I would be out of words on what to tell them, and unfortunately, because of the limitations, I don't know that people around them are able to even give them the comfort. But what these kids need is some level of certainty and some comfort, and it's impossible in those circumstances. You know, there's now a lot of research that has been comparing even immigrant children that have been separated with those that have not been separated, and the immigrants that have been separated develop a lot more symptoms of anxiety and depression than those that are not separated. So having a parent going through the stressful experience of migrating to a new country, being detained, and all of that uncertainty, it's less distressful when you have a parent next to you. But if your parent is taken from you in such traumatic circumstances, then it's a lot more distressful.
Janet, I'll go back to you. How long can these kids be detained in these, I mean, they're not dire circumstances, but they're certainly not good?
So the process is when they are picked up at the border, they're initially in the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and then if they're identified as being an unaccompanied minor, or if they're separated from their parent and become an unaccompanied minor, they have to be transferred to the custody of the Office of Refugee Resettlement within 72 hours. Mm-hmm. And once they're in that system, they're transferred to facilities around the country that are contracted with the Office of Refugee Resettlement. And they vary from short-term shelter facilities to staff secure to secure facilities to long-term foster care situations. Traditionally, unaccompanied children, about 90, 92, 93% of them do eventually get reunified with a family member, but that process has been lengthening, and it can take anywhere from the shortest I've probably seen is 3 weeks to 4 weeks, but also to well over a year. Yeah. And then for those children who don't have any options of being released to a sponsor, they will stay in custody up until they turn 18, which can then be several years.
I only have about a minute left. I'd like to hear one thought from all three of you on what you would tell the president, knowing what you know about kids and separation and how they develop. Dr. Benjamin, what would you tell him?
Let's stop separating children from their parents.
Janet?
Period.
Same thing, and just realize you have children of your own, and imagine what would happen, you know, if your grandchildren were separated from their parents, and how awful that would be.
Dr. Munoz, yes?
I would like to say that this is not protecting our country in any way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all so much for your perspectives tonight. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Talking about the pain and trouble these kids face is one thing, but in a time when, for good or for bad, social media magnifies moral outrage, pictures are really worth more than 1,000 words. And this is the photo that's put a face on this issue, taken last week by photojournalist and parent John Moore. That last bit's pretty important, because as Moore explains, this image of a 2-year-old girl from Honduras crying as her mother is frisked by Border Patrol agents was especially hard to take.
I was on the embankment of the river with a Border Patrol agent as rafts of people came across the river, across the Rio Grande from Mexico and into Texas. People were very scared. They had come to turn themselves in for asylum, but it was the middle of the night. One by one, they were frisked, patted down, and everyone had to turn in all their personal items and their shoelaces as well. I noticed a mother was unlacing the shoes of her daughter, a little girl, I didn't know how old. The mother was one of the last people to be body searched. The officer asked her to set her child down, and just in that moment, when the girl's feet touched the ground, she started crying. Sometimes we have to keep photographing, even in difficult situations emotionally. I only had the chance to shoot a few pictures. I got down on a knee, so I was on the child's level as she looked up at her mother crying. This picture was taken just before these families were taken away. And so this is the closest I'll ever come as a photojournalist to capturing the separation of families. I knew it was an important image, but I had no way of knowing that it would have the resonance that it's had. I'm glad that it has, but at the same time, it makes me very sad.
Now we want to tell you about a story you'll see here soon on The National. As the U.S. hardens its border with Mexico, the impact goes beyond those people who cross it illegally. When a journalist feared for his life, he fled Mexico with his teenage son, and he followed the rules, entering the U.S. legally and asking for asylum. As his long case draws to a close, Adrian got rare access to a detention center to talk to him.
So about a decade ago, Emilio Gutierrez was writing about corruption in the Mexican military, and that's when he was hunted and threatened and attacked by the Mexican military. So it was around that time that he tried to seek asylum in the United States, and his case has been winding its way through the courts ever since. An American judge decided that Emilio should be deported. So Emilio and his son have been in detention here in El Paso since December, and we've been trying to get in. And the final word is that, yes, we can, but we can only get audio, not video, which is what this is all about. There's so many questions to ask these two, including, how long do you think you can hang on? And what exactly is likely to happen if you do get sent back to Mexico? We'll see what we get. Hola, Oscar. I'm Adrian. Emilio. My first question for either one of you, but mostly you, Emilio, is how are you?
Es una experiencia por demás desagradable, en donde las autoridades buscan destruir la autoestima.
What happens to Emilio if he gets deported?
If he goes back home to Chihuahua, where he has his ancestral home, he's dead. They would kill him.
The BC government has a costly decision on its hands. Leases for several salmon farms are set to expire tomorrow. The industry generates more than $1 billion a year and supports thousands of jobs. But opponents say it's not worth the risk to wild salmon. With the deadline fast approaching, Greg Rasmussen traveled to a remote cove on BC's coast to find out what's at stake.
It's a stunning place and the main battleground in the fight over fish farming.
At no point did they show any compassion or any heart or anything other than their bully tactics.
Ernest Alfred has become the face of Indigenous opposition to these farms. He wants the Atlantic salmon being raised here banned from the open ocean and put into large tanks on land.
They're cheap, is what it is. Moving this operation out onto land is going to cost them a lot of money, and they should be the ones paying for that.
Here he is last year at a protest camp he set up on the farm, supported by local First Nations who are fighting a broader legal battle claiming much of the area as traditional territory. Another ally is Alexandra Morton. She's spent decades documenting the spread of diseases and parasites from farmed to wild stocks.
I'm 100% sure these farms are killing off wild salmon. When you look everywhere in the world, wild salmon go into precipitous decline as soon as this industry operates.
With operating permits expiring, opponents say it's time to shut them down. There are about 50 active fish farms in BC waters. Opponents want 20 of them shut down when their leases with the BC government expire later this month. Many are located on key migration routes for wild salmon. At heart, fears of the widespread loss of wild salmon.
We are really at the tipping point.
The province's NDP government has voiced concerns about the farms, but won't say if it will cancel the leases.
If he renews the 10 years, it's like enabling a drug addict. They can just keep on with this bad behavior.
Atlantic salmon were recently evicted from Washington state waters. They're also banned in Alaska. The BC industry says raising millions of salmon on land-based farms isn't possible.
There have been people working to try and perfect growing salmon in market size in tanks for 30 years, and no one's been able to make a sustainable business out of it. A lot of people have actually lost a lot of money.
Other industries, such as this large smokehouse, are able to take advantage of a steady supply of fish. Indigenous people are a big part of the current workforce, which would be cut if salmon farms are banned.
There is a lot of us First Nations that aren't against it, that are for it.
Indigenous business people like James Walkus have invested millions in specialized boats used to transport farm fish.
It would be just an absolute devastation to the industry.
Although the leases expire this week, the BC government is expected to allow the farms to continue to operate, while its new Salmon Advisory Council, created just last week, looks for long-term answers. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Port Hardy.
Now, there has been some success in land-based salmon farming in recent years. A farm on Vancouver Island was the first in North America to grow Atlantic salmon on a commercial scale. After 4 years in operation, it is now marginally profitable, harvesting about 5 tons of salmon every week. And a Norwegian company is in the process of building the world's largest land-based salmon farm just south of Miami. It's already had one in operation in Denmark since 2011.
Remember, you can always get more of The National in your inbox. The National today takes you inside our journalism every afternoon. We also take a look at closer look at some of the stories you may have missed. And today was the fact that there are now 1 billion guns scattered around the world. We drilled down on the facts behind that number. Subscribe to the newsletter at cbcnews.ca/The National.
Do you have what it takes to become Canada's first ever Smartest Person Junior? Show us what kind of smart you are. Apply now at cbc.ca/smartestpersonjunior.
I just feel bad for the family. I just feel really awful about what happened.
Tonight on The National, a former care home manager breaking down at the inquiry into the case of serial killer nurse Elizabeth Wetlaufer. Heather Nicholas was the director of care at the Meadow Park, the last place Wetlaufer is known to have killed someone in her care. Today, Nicholas said that when hiring Wetlaufer, Nicholas didn't contact Wetlaufer's previous supervisors at Crescent Care to ask why she was let go. The manager also said she didn't report Wetlaufer to the Ontario College of Nurses after learning of her addiction issues and that she was suspected of stealing drugs. One more note on this story. On Sunday, we reported Crescent Care sent a reference letter on Wetlaufer's behalf, which helped her get a job at Meadow Park. That letter actually arrived after she was hired. Though in testimony today, the company said it confirmed their decision to hire her.
The building just shook. It was just, your first instinct was, oh my God, somebody's hurt. Something happened.
Frightening moments today in St. John's after an explosion ripped apart a building in an industrial park. It happened this morning at the site of a transportation business on the outskirts of the city. The blast so powerful, thousands of people heard it. Investigators say they're still trying to figure out the cause, but they do have a theory.
We believe that the employees were working on a fuel tank which carried maybe gasoline or some type of a petroleum product. It will be the fumes inside those tanks if that's in fact the cause of this.
Remarkably, everyone inside the building at the time of the explosion survived, but 3 were taken to hospital with undisclosed injuries. And as expected, Mike Hoffman is no longer with the Ottawa Senators. He was traded today after those explosive allegations that his girlfriend harassed Ottawa captain Erik Karlsson's wife. But in a twist, Hoffman was traded not once but twice today, sent first to the San Jose Sharks before being flipped to the Florida Panthers.
10 of the survivors of the Humboldt bus crash are back together tonight. They've reunited in Las Vegas for the first time for the NHL Awards. The Broncos will be honored, and their coach, Darcy Hogan, who died in the crash, is nominated for an award. We spoke with Caleb Dahlgreen, one of the survivors, about the trip, and that is our moment of the day.
It was really nice. It was really nice to spend the time with them in the airport. Normally after a season, once your season's over, you get to spend time with each other and enjoy each other's company. And now it was abruptly ended without even knowing anything at all. And now to actually see each other and spend some quality time with each other is something that you really need, and I think is helping all of us. We're here to support and honor our coach Darcy and honor those 29 people that were in the accident. And we're doing it together.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you the Humboldt Broncos. Gentlemen, please come up to the stage.
Rosemary, when you think about what they went through physically and emotionally, it is, extraordinary to see them there and to hear them speak in such a measured way. But it is going to be a long road back. At least one of the players will be with the team in the fall. Another is going to be coaching a AAA midget team, I guess, an age group slightly younger than they are. But two are still in hospital, and it really wasn't that long ago that that crash happened.
No, it wasn't. And Ryan Strasniski, who Susan Ormiston has talked to a lot, was there, which is remarkable that he has the strength to be there. They're really an incredible group of guys, so hopefully they'll have fun while they're down there as well. They say they're going to watch a movie tonight or maybe hit the pool. That's the National for June 19th. Good night, everybody.
Good night.